Good morning. My name is Alex Sanchez. I'm President and CEO of the Florida Bankers Association. It's an honor to be here with you. Of course, being from Florida, this is a very, our third largest state. This topic that we're going to be discussing with the panel is very important to us. Florida, as you know, we have a lot of ports, a lot of major airports, and we do a lot of exporting to the hemisphere. So it's a very important part of our economy. Our governors have gone to South and Central America over the many years. Governor Bush, Governor Rick Scott, and our great governor now, Governor Ron DeSantis, have all gone to the hemisphere looking for new ways to open up new markets for our products and services in Florida. So, which come from the rest of the country. Not all of them are manufactured in our state. So, welcome to this panel on Latin America trade opportunities. It's my honor to introduce the Ambassador of Guatemala to the United States, Alfonso Quiñonez Lemus. Mr. Ambassador, welcome, sir. Great to have you. Also, Mariano, Parlato, country manager of DISS in Puerto Rico. Mariano, great to have you here as well. And then Max Trujillo, of president of MJT Policy. Max, also great to have you on the panel. Welcome. So let's get right into it, because I do want to leave time for a Q&A. Let me just make these opening remarks. Look, exporting. I just got back from Tunisia on Saturday. I was there for a week helping the bankers in Tunisia with issues that they have to hopefully strengthen their economy. I was with the central bank. I was with the finance minister and other major players of that country where the Arab Spring happened, as you know, over 10 years ago. So great promise there. I think great things are going to happen in that North African country. But as I look at them, I see our hemisphere. And our hemisphere is made up of a lot of middle-class citizens in Central and South America. They are able and willing to buy our products, and they like the United States. They are our friends strategically. I'd rather have our companies manufacture in Central and South America than in China. I mean, strategically, they're closer to our values. Would you rather ship from China or ship from Guatemala? I'd rather ship from Central America. We talk about supply chains, but we always concentrate on China, and unfortunately, the only time the media in this country talks about Central and South America is on the immigration issue. That's it, but it's a great part of our world to sell American products and services, and with citizens that share our values in many of those countries, that many of them come to our country all the time. In Florida, we have tens of thousands of Brazilians. We have a magazine called Florida Trend, which is a business magazine, and they named like Time Magazine a Person of the Year. Well, 4 years ago, the Person of the Year for Florida Trend magazine was Brazil. They named the country because of all the close commercial ties between the state of Florida and the country of Brazil, and of course, our country. So I hope for those of you who have are in positions to dictate where to export in your companies, I hope you will, if you're not doing so, I hope you will consider South and Central America, because it's fertile ground, and also to buy their products as well. So let's begin, Mariano, with you. What is the post-COVID-19 economic recovery outlook for countries in the region? Can you tackle that first, and then we'll go to the ambassador?
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. South America has been facing many challenges, especially with in the post-COVID scenario, there is an inflationary scenario that is taking place. The countries sadly have fallen massively in the continuous printing of money to attend their public internal debts. But as they do that, this expand the inflationary scenario, and as Alex told, people, the common people, the media class are getting poorer and poorer, and poverty will be an issue in the years to come. That's why it's important for those countries to create the conditions, the sustainable conditions, and I think Guatemala is our experience as entrepreneurs, as exporters to Guatemala, countries like Guatemala that have been addressed the problem in the opposite direction, opening the conditions to do sustainable business there. So it's important that to present that the countries are having some balance of payment problems, and this will be a major issue in the years to come too. So for our exports as American business, it will be an important issue. They are implementing non-tariff barriers, such as administrative permissions, like import licenses, affidavits to allow certain importers to start operations. So you have to put that in mind, and it's important to have a good strategy. In our case, we have addressed that by opening local commercial bases, local commercial offices in those countries to avoid those tariff and non-tariff barriers.
Thank you, Mariano. Mr. Ambassador, tell us, what is the post-COVID-19 economic recovery outlook for your country and those in the region? You can share that with us, Mr. Ambassador.
Yes, thank you, Alex. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And it's great to be here with Mariano and Max this panel. Well, there is no doubt that COVID had a great economic impact in the world. And the region, Latin America, was not the exception. As a matter of fact, the average loss of GDP in 2020 for the region was around 7%. That's the average. And there were countries that lost in the double figures. Their growth was -10, -12%. In the case of Guatemala, because of the strong economy that we have, we grew at -1.5% only. We were the best in Latin America. We were the ones that lost the least in Latin America. And the year after, in 2021, we grew at 7.5%. And this is because of conservative and strong management of our economy that got us even to the point that recently both Fitch and Standard & Poor's increased our credit rating, and the International Monetary Fund praised our economy, which is not normal for the IMF to be going around the world praising economies, but they did on Guatemala. Almost all the countries in the region are in a V recovery. Some of that V may be more open and or closer, but they're rebounding from COVID. And this includes the United States. And why I bring the United States into the conversation, because it's the largest trading partner with a lot of the countries in the region. So it's important also to look at the recovery in the United States. Obviously, you are having right now some inflationary pressures here in the United States that may impact, but at the end of the day, the United States continues to be, and I foresee that it would remain the largest trading partner for most of the countries, at least in the Central American region. And in the case of Guatemala, the percentage of trade that we have in terms of the total trade in the world with the United States is about 30% in the case of Guatemala, imports and exports in both. Obviously, and we all know that, and you know much better than we, that COVID exposed some limitations in the supply chain, and also exposed the need to have, and in certain cases, and in the case for the United States, even as a matter of national security, the need to have more fluid terms, more fluid trade, both in terms of reliability and efficiency. As well as access to products, both perishables and non-perishables. One example that we are seeing right now is baby formula. That could be eased here if that could be easily imported from other countries. During the COVID, we saw that with PPEs, we saw that with medicines as well. So we can see how important is trade in order to really have or keep the national security of countries like the United States and Guatemala. All these issues lead to the need to have better logistics, in the region, so to take advantage of the trade opportunities that exist in this very dynamic relationship between our countries and the United States, and take advantage of the free trade agreements that exist, like the one we have with the United States. After COVID, I think that the U.S. should look more towards the region. We considered and should be seen as more reliable trading partners with the United States than other countries in the world. Alex mentioned China, and I'm sure that the part of the conversation we'll get into China, and that should make countries like Guatemala, which are closer to the United States, not just geographically, but as Alex mentioned, in values and principles, more attractive for that investment and for that trade. It's important also to recognize that in order for Guatemala to take advantage of the free trade that exists, we need to increase our capacity to have better logistics, to have better infrastructure, and that's what we are trying to work on.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Max, what's your perspective on the COVID-19 recovery?
Well, first of all, thank you, Alex, and it's a privilege to be here with the panelists, and thank you for the National Association for inviting me. I want to pick up on the last thing that the ambassador said regarding technologies. I think that the opportunity that the post-pandemic brings to the region, and even here, but it continues to be an opportunity, is to improve and modernize the technologies to conduct business. You call it e-commerce, trade, digital trade, whatever the title that you want to use. It is the ability for the region to not only adapt to the crisis, which is what they've done, but to continue that effort, to continue that process. And what does that imply? Well, it implies the continued investment in telecom infrastructure. So they have the ability to have broadband, and not only to have it for the large corporations that obviously already have some sort of access, but to the small and medium-sized businesses in those countries, and to make it affordable. Because if technology is available, but you don't have it at a price that is effective for them to conduct business, then they cannot do cross-border trades with other small, medium-sized businesses. And that is key. Another part of the opportunity that I see for the region is, as they already have to learn how to deal with the new way of doing business when they cannot meet in person, be that to have the money in hand or a quick check transaction locally. They effort to do the legal framework to do financial transactions is important for the region. That it's able to do it across countries within the region and of course with the US. Which brings us finally to how do countries help small and medium-sized businesses in their countries do that? Do they have the right capacity or resources to capacitate those new small businesses or medium-sized businesses that are trying to expand their portfolio, their client base, etc. In the US, we already have several tools, and if a small business wants to quickly learn on how to operate X, Y, and Z, they can go to the SBA or the SBDC, or they can have some certain fundings that can be made available through the Exim Bank if they meet the qualifications, or if they're trying to do a medium to bigger size business, then they can use funding from the Development Finance Corporation. I mean, there are different tools available that we take for granted, and sometimes they don't work the way that the business community wants, but they are there, and there are always possibilities to improve. In the region, I believe, we should see more of that type of help to small and medium-sized businesses. And the more you can create the ability of those businesses to conduct exports or imports or any type of transaction, you develop more a consistent base of commerce, which creates growth, which creates wealth, which then tampers some of the other issues that those countries in the region are facing, and that sometimes we have the consequences of the instability or the economic situation challenges that those countries may face, and then, as Alex mentioned in the beginning, create a narrative as the only narrative for the region, which isn't true. There's other issues as well. But I think commerce and growth and wealth tamper and take care of a lot of the issues that Alex raised in his stage.
You know, Max, good point, and I'm going to ask the next question. Before I do that, as an American and as someone who believes in the free enterprise system, I ask myself the question, and I think the lessons learned from the COVID global experience we've gone through about supply chains, about our dependence on China for many critical parts that are important to our industries. I hope that was a wake-up call. I really do. And so my question is, to the many U.S. companies that are manufactured in China and not in our hemisphere, what do you want to make stronger economically? China or our friends in the hemisphere? To me, that's a clear-cut answer. I'd rather help our friends in the hemisphere. Strategically, for the interest of the United States of America, it's better for us if Guatemala, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Argentina, Chile, et cetera, are stronger and more financially stronger friends of our country than China. So with that, to the panel, Ambassador, I'm going to go with you first on this question. What opportunities exist for new trade agreements amid the increasing influence of China as a player in the Western Hemisphere, Mr. Ambassador?
Thank you, Alex, and I think that this is a very important question, and the way you frame it in presenting this question, it really puts it in where it should be. And you may have heard this term over and over again, nearshoring or reshoring. I have started using a different word. I have started using friend-shoring or ally-shoring. Precisely on the line that Alex was mentioning. Who do you want to do business with? Who is a better business for you? Is it China, or is it the countries in the region? Which, by the way, where every dollar that we export to the United States, that dollar comes back, and in certain cases it's $1.25 and even more on imports from the United States. So at the end of the day, it's a very good business to invest in our countries. Because we would need in certain cases the raw materials that we got from the United States, and we would re-export it overseas. And for that, we need all the logistics that are needed. So China is overpresent in the conversation. I have to make a disclosure here. Guatemala has diplomatic relations with Taiwan, not with China. We are one of the few countries in the world that remain that way. And we do it because of values and principles. We could have diplomatic relations with China and benefit because of that in terms of trade or in terms of investment from China, which I think is another element that should be put on the table, investment, because China, through their Road and Belt Initiative, are going throughout the world, really providing a lot of financing and a lot of projects. And you know, in the short term, that is something that creates solutions for countries that need that infrastructure. In the long run, it turns to be what is called a China trap. So it's important to focus on that, and in the discussion, add the elements that Alex mentioned in terms of who do you want to trade with. Right now, there are a number of proposals, bills in Congress trying to address this, because the juncture we had, it's because of COVID, it's because of supply chain disruption and China, and the issue of migration that has been also mentioned here, really creates an opportunity. There is a saying that goes more or less like a good crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And I think that we should seize the opportunity and promote, in order to address this issue, some of which are of national security to the United States. I mean, I don't know the percentage or the dependence of the United States in certain staples from China. Medicines, PPEs, to mention the ones that are right now because of COVID, or rare earths, rare minerals. I don't know if you have heard that one as well. I mean, those are the ones that are needed for this kind of thing, sort of automobiles and so on. And the issue of migration, with that I would finalize my comments. And this is something that Max mentioned, which I think is the key to it. It is right now the main issue in the bilateral relationship with Guatemala, and perhaps the regional relationship with a lot of the countries of the region. But what is the sustainable way of addressing the issue? Well, it's through creating opportunities in our countries. People are coming here looking for jobs. There is a push factor and there is a pull factor. There are jobs here. And there are, last time I checked, I think more than 10 million job openings and only 8.5 million people actively looking for jobs. So there is a pull factor. And if you add to that the push factor that there are lack of opportunities in our countries, well, it's a perfect mix. So how do we address that? Well, create those jobs in our countries, in Guatemala. How do we do that? In a sustainable manner is through investment and through trade, and through creating the enabling environment that would allow the private sector to do what the private sector does best, which is create those jobs and make money. And we are not ashamed of saying that, because that is why you do it. And then that trickles down into other issues. So the issue of China is very important. The issue of really promoting the ally shoring or the friend shoring also is very important. And at the end of the day, that would create a win-win for both countries or regions.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Max, what's your perspective on the increasing influence of China in our hemisphere, and how our countries can benefit, our companies, I should say, can benefit from investing more and operating more, perhaps even manufacturing more in the hemisphere. What's your perspective on that and the China influence?
Well, I think in terms of the China influence, well, it's our fault in terms of the U.S. government. We have forgotten, or we tend to forget in terms of policy and our neighbors in the south. And it's at our own peril, at our own disadvantage economically. The way I see it, and in kind of way I follow the train of thought of the ambassador, is our business community, as a policy, we should continue to try to invest more in Latin America to create jobs and foster more economic relations. But here's the challenge. The opportunity and the challenge I see. And it's almost in the same question as, is it the chicken or the egg situation? A business-friendly, stable environment in a country brings stability, not just the government, but the respect for the rule of law, which creates a good environmental business for economic growth. But if you don't have a country that has or believes in the rule of law, or has issues in the rule of law, or has challenges in how to implement a steady, fair, transparent business environment, then the business environment and the business community will not go to the country and invest. And however, we do know that when there's a strong business environment and a strong business community, it stabilizes governments, it stabilizes the economy. So how do we bridge that gap? And I think that's where the US policy comes into play, because we can facilitate that for both things to happen at the same time. And the more we can focus on those areas, we don't need to worry about what the Chinese are doing, because it's on our own interest to do this, and not as a counterpoint strategy against the Chinese. Chinese already are there in the region, and they are taking advantage that we have not paid attention in technology sector, for example. That's why Huawei is so big in the region. We will have some issues eventually if we don't have them now, in terms of business transactions that are done through technologies that are based on Huawei technology. But we are still in the early stages of post-COVID. We can reshape the way things have been done. And I think this is, as you said, it's a great moment to take opportunity of this crisis and use it for something good. And it is in our national interest to help the national interest of the countries in the region to be safe.
You know, Mariano, before I go to your perspective, this is not about being charitable. This is about smart investment. Again, the supply chain. I'd rather have things shipped from our hemisphere than depending on the other side of the world. And in a government that might say, no, we're not shipping that, as we found out during the pandemic. You're not getting that to the U.S. We're going to keep, whether it was the mask or other necessary items at the onset of the pandemic. The University of Vanderbilt's America's Barometer did a survey recently, and they said trust in China in the hemisphere has gone down by 18 points between 2012 and 2021, standing at 38%, while our country, the United States of America, saw an 18% increase to 55%. So what does that mean? That means, again, that the people in our hemisphere look to our country for leadership. It's a country that's a friendly country. Their likeness for the United States, and then so the issues that, for the same reasons that we go to China to invest in manufacture, we can do that right here in the hemisphere for a cheaper price. At the end of the day, to reduce shipping costs and other, especially doing it with allies, where political tensions will be greatly reduced. So, interesting result there, Mariano, from the Vanderbilt University America's Barometer on how trust in the United States has increased substantially versus China. So, what's your perspective, Mariano? You're sort of, you got a foot here, you got a foot over there. You're in Puerto Rico, so you're closer to the hemisphere and our friends in Central and South America. What's your perspective on the opportunities?
Well,
Thank you, Alex. And Argentina is my country of birth, actually. So it's worrisome for someone like me to see from a personal perspective that Argentina has fallen in the China trap. And what it means, for instance, Argentina moved the grain production from wheat, sunflower, corn, oat to soy. That's been happening for the last 20 years. My relatives have started to harvest soy, and everything is to supply China. So the second trap was the currency swaps. They have used the currency swaps to take a hand, to give you a hand in terms of, I will relieve your currency urgencies and crisis, but something in exchange of taking everything. For example, establishing both military and special bases. So that's growing concern, and from the business people, as a businessman doing business in Puerto Rico, from Puerto Rico to the region, to the Caribbean and Central America, my growing concern is that this initiative has been happening from the south northbound. So it's been our strategy to expand our operations from, we are small. I'm the country manager for Puerto Rico of a small business company. We have grown during the last 5 years 150% in our employments by expanding from Puerto Rico. Once we discovered that Puerto Rico, we sell medical equipment as well as healthcare products, non-pharmaceutical healthcare products. And we discovered that Puerto Rico was starting to be a replacement market, not a new growing market. So we decided to expand in 2016. For a cultural reason, our first approach was to Dominican Republic. And we have grown from 3 initial employees in Dominican Republic to 39 today, amid the pandemic. Once Dominican Republic consolidated its position, we decided to open a hub, a regional hub in Guatemala, because we found the right conditions to establish both a commercial base for our business in Guatemala and the region, and from 1 employee in 3 years, we had 17 qualified employments today. We give jobs to engineers, specialized healthcare equipment technicians. And we are expanding to Honduras right now. And all those conditions couldn't be possible if we didn't have the frame created by in the free trade agreements, such as the CAFTA-DR. And I think the same is for Colombia, Chile, and Peru. But the growing concern for me, knowing the region very well, is to have both Chile and Peru with a turning path in their politics. And the scenario could be a challenging one, especially for American exporters. So if you're having in mind to export to those countries, I don't want to I don't want this to be not to do a deterrent for that. But think about the strategy, because the strategy to roundabout that problem could be to establish an operation, a small operation, to create jobs, and that's the strategy we decided to adopt to overcome not Guatemala, because Guatemala is a very Guatemala has been the most receptive country to do that, but Honduras requires that to be open for business. Okay, to American exporters, they require to open at least a commercial basis and employment creation.
Yeah, thank you, Mariano. And we were talking before the panel, remember when President William Jefferson Clinton did the Summit of the Americas at the Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables in Miami with all the leaders from the hemisphere. That basically, kiddingly, the joke was that Miami was the capital of the hemisphere, because it's so much easier to catch flights in and out of Miami to go to other countries here. But it just highlighted when President Clinton did that, the important, and I commend him for that, for doing that. And we need to do more of that. I know we have interests all around the world, but we just, again, just the Central and South America in our attention spans suffers in our country, both in the media and elsewhere in government, and we need to pay more attention. And hopefully, with China getting more involved in our own backyard, as they say, that will be a wake-up call for us. We're going to go to Q&A to the panel, but before we do that, I want to ask each panelist, and Max, I'm going to start with you. Take about 2 minutes so we can get to the Q&A. If you were the wizard of the world and could change something as far as policy in the United States to help encourage more trade with the hemisphere, or whether it's changing policy in the U.S. or any other issue that you could change, what would that be, Max, to encourage more trade, more economic trade and involvement between our country and the hemisphere? What would that be? Take 2 minutes for that, and then we'll go to the ambassador next, and then with Mariano.
Well, I think that, and you must understand that I work in Congress, and so I'm a creature of the legislative body, so I always think we need to legislate something new. But I'm going to go against nature in this process and say, actually, we don't need new laws. We need to make the ones that we have in the books work better. So, for example, we have several institutions: the Millennium Challenge Corporation, we have the Development Finance Corporation, we have USAID, and we have even the Small Business Administration can also help in terms of international trade. Plus, we have the entire Department of Commerce and the International Trade Administration, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of stuff out there. So the question is, do we need to reframe from the executive point of view the policy of how we go out and invest in Latin America? And to invest in a long-term policy, we have always said, at least for the last 30 years, I always said that we have a policy in Latin America, and our policy is not to have a policy. I mean, we have on paper one, but the implementation of it, assuming that it can be done, is not done. And sometimes it's not done at all, because it's more of a conversation piece. So if you're asking me what I think should happen is, I want to see the models that we already have working, that have worked well. Like the model of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, I thought was a fantastic development when it first came out. The Development Finance Corporation now, which used to be OPEC, is supposed to be our answer to the Chinese Belt Road Initiative. It isn't, and we're certainly not focusing enough on Latin America through that corporation, and that can be changed. In Congress, even Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Bob Menendez have introduced legislation, like at least now in two Congresses, to make that so, for the Development Finance Corporation to focus more on Latin America. So what I'm saying is, we do have already the institutions to focus on Latin America. What we don't have is necessarily, is what I think, is a focus on how to implement the goals of those agencies. And I think that's how we should go.
Thank you, Max. Thank you. Mr. Ambassador, in 2 minutes, what's your perspective? What, if you were the genie in the bottle, what would you command to improve relations in commerce between the United States and the hemisphere?
Thank you. Last year, when my president was here visiting Washington, he gave a speech in one of the think tanks. And he ended his speech after going through all the things that we are doing in this bilateral relationship with the United States. He ended his speech saying, and Guatemala is the best ally of the United States in the region, even though some members of this administration do not recognize that. And I can expect that because they may see the same situation in other countries and the region. I will take some of the points that Max mentioned, and one of those is the focus. But it has to be a positive focus, one that would create that enabling environment that would allow us to have more trade, more investment, which at the end of the day is what really makes the needle move. And in order for that to happen, you need two things. One is policy, which there's a lot of discussion right now in Congress. There are a certain number of bills in the House. Congressman Green from Tennessee introduced a bill, and in the Senate, Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, it's about to present another bill to promote some of these issues, and as Max mentioned, Senator Menendez, Senator Trujillo. So there's a lot of interest. So from the policy standpoint, but also the administration has to be focusing on the right way towards the region. There is a great opportunity short-term, which is the Summit of the Americas. Alex mentioned the Summit of the Americas in Miami. Well, you're going to have a Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles in early June. And it's a great opportunity for the United States to be engaged in a positive way with the region. But additionally to that, you need to make the tools that you have in your toolbox more dynamic. Some of the ones that were mentioned by Max, the Development Finance Corporation, the Millennium Challenge Corporation. That is, let me give that example to you. The Millennium Challenge Corporation is one of the best mechanisms that you have, but there are limited accessibility for countries. Guatemala cannot access the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Why? Because we are a highly income country, and by law, you cannot access that if you graduated to that level. Notwithstanding, the need exists, and the recognition that through those kind of investments, we can get to a better position in terms of our infrastructure and so on and so forth, that at the end would benefit or would further the bilateral objectives that we have in our relationship, which at this point, the issue of migration is the most important. So I would say U.S. policy, wise use of your tools, the right focus, so we can have a better relationship with the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Mariano, what's your take? If you could have one wish granted to you in 2 minutes or less, please.
Well, as a practitioner, I would like to have more down-to-earth initiatives, more initiatives that could be really rapidly implemented and give us the results we are expecting for. And that's important because, as you may know, we feel as business people, we feel that our time is quite different from the politics time. So we need results that can achieve us the goals, help us to achieve the goals we are looking for in order to expand our markets and increase our presence and build, in terms of politics, a counterbalance to another powerful country that is dominating the region, especially South America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariano. And let me just say this about Mariano's home country. One of my favorite ice cream flavors is the Haagen-Dazs Dulce de Leche. You know that flavor? I love that. And if you go to Argentina, Mar del Plata, the dulce de leche, you know, the cream of milk, I guess translated into English, is absolutely incredible in Argentina, let me tell you. You're right.
Right. 2 cookies with a dulce de leche in the middle and dark chocolate.
Just really good.
It's almost lunchtime. I don't want this conversation.
My American citizenship and put the Argentinian one.
Yeah. So, first question, though. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for putting this panel together. And my name is Ernesto Pinal from Idaho NADEC. So the first thing I would like to comment is that I think Guatemala today is a very good example of regional integration that we should look at. Today, Guatemala imports about $18 billion and exports only $12 billion. And out of those $18 billion, 32% come from the United States, and China only 14%. So we are in good standing with Guatemala because the United States is the main trading partner that it has. Then after that is El Salvador, then Honduras, then Mexico, and then Nicaragua. So it's the region already there. Northern Central America, Mexico, and then the United States. And China, as I said, is only 14%, but it's growing every year, and that's a big concern. So we have to pay attention to that. Now, let me make a disclaimer. I don't work for the Guatemalan embassy or the Guatemalan government. I just wanted to share that information because it's factual. And I think it provides a different perspective. Now, what I would like to ask the ambassador is how could the current CAFTA, the free trade agreement that the countries in Central America have, and the free trade agreement that Mexico has with Central America, those 3 vehicles, could be utilized to enhance that trade and, in a way, depend less on China and depend more on the region itself? And the second question is, one of the issues that I noticed, not only in Guatemala, but in Central America in general, is the fact that the customs close like a government office at 6 p.m. and when you have food or things that are very sensitive to time, you know, the 21st century requires a different approach to that. So, you know, I guess that's something that I would like to hear what is being done or being proposed, because it definitely, I believe, needs to change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto. And I would love to continue the conversation after we finish this panel. Perhaps
if you want to stay at 4, we are going to actually, my panel is the Southern Trade Initiative, and we're going to actually speak at large about that integration of the region, Central America, South America, and Canada, and the US. And we will have the Minister of the Embassy of Canada and also the Minister of the Embassy of Mexico in the panel.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll try to be here. Just the questions that you pose, I think it's very important because there is a lot of conversation if CAFTA DR is working. And there's a conversation about reopening. And I think that would not be a good thing to do. I think that what you can do and what you should do is try to review on what kind of decisions, administrative decisions, the U.S. government can make in order to make those free trade agreements more dynamic. and to see also how we can integrate the CAFTA-DR agreement with the USMCA. So to have a better opportunity to trade more, and not trade just between the United States and Guatemala or Central America, but also intra-regional, as you mentioned. The trade that we have with Mexico, it's only 3%. It's marginal. There's a huge space to grow there, and by in a way dovetailing or making a strong relationship between the free trade agreement that exists in the United States and Guatemala and Mexico, the USMCA, and the free trade agreement of CAFTA-DR, that would make it happen. And there are possibilities of doing things such as creating or building some of the components of things that can be put together in Mexico and be exported to the United States, bringing some of the raw material from the United States in Guatemala and have Mexico put it together, because they have more sophisticated industry. I mean, it's not that I'm pessimistic, but we're not going to be building cars in Guatemala anytime soon. But they are doing it in Mexico. But perhaps we can produce some components of those cars that then will be exported to the United States. So making it more dynamic through administrative decisions instead of opening it for Congress, because you know how complicated it is. Once that gets to be open, you don't know what's going to end up being. So if ain't broke, don't fix it. The other issue that Ernesto mentioned, I think is very important. Trade facilitation is key in order to really move the needle towards enhancing international trade. And in Guatemala, we have approached the issue from two standpoints. One is trying to get all the procedures more transparent and have all of them aligned. We passed a law recently, which is in Spanish is anti-trámites law. It's a anti-red tape law, basically to do most, if not all, the applications online, so we don't have to go through all these different offices and get the seal of approval, which also goes to one element that I've mentioned, which is transparency and rule of law, which is another element that it's important. Guatemala is well prepared. We hired the consulting firm McKinsey, the company, and it was a tripartite effort between the government, the municipality of Guatemala, and the private sector. And we tasked McKinsey to do a study which is called Guatemala Moving Forward, that identify the niches or those areas that we could be attracting more investment and creating more opportunities for trade between the United States and Guatemala. But at the same time, identify other issues that we have worked on. And one of those is infrastructure, the other one is the issues of strengthening all of the capacity in the area of rule of law, and then is the issue of capacity of the human capacity. So to have the labor force ready to really supply the needs that exist, like the ones that were mentioned by Mariano.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We have another question, sir?
Yes, this is for Ambassador. I lived in Guatemala for 2 years. Yeah, a long time ago. My first international, I'm going to date myself, in 1971 and 72. Wasn't exactly the safest time, because I lived under martial law, but I loved it. I also lived in Nicaragua. I had a choice between the two. I stayed in Guatemala. But I also, back in the Bush administration, the early time, I worked here on Capitol Hill on behalf of the DEC, getting DR-CAF to pass through Congress. So I have met with God knows how many members of Congress, and you'd be surprised how many people were objected to it, because we have a trade surplus with Central America. I mean, what's the problem? As you know, we only passed by one vote, which was shocking when you take a look at it. So I have a comment, and I'm going to have a question for you. That I remember traveling, we did meetings with the 5 ambassadors. We traveled around talking about all the benefits of DR-CAF. And the Costa Rican ambassador would always start his comments by, we have a serious immigration problem in Costa Rica. So everybody just waited. He waited until it settled down. Said, we have too many Americans. My daughter lives in Costa Rica, so I can understand that. My question to you is, on DR-CAF, what is the greatest benefit that Guatemala has derived from that free trade agreement?
That's an important question, and I hope that you visited after you lived there, you've been back to Guatemala. And I think that perhaps the greatest one has been in one area, which is textile and apparel, which has created a lot of opportunities in Guatemala and continues to be the area. By the way, McKinsey, in the study, in identifying the niches, identified textile and apparel as the one, together with another one, which is BPOs and call centers, but between the two of them. So I think that allowing us, what is a free trade agreement? At the end of the day, it's something that would allow you to attract more investment. So a free trade agreement is something that would provide certainty in the trade that exists between two countries, and that would allow you to attract investment. Because our market is not large enough to attract investment. I mean, certain kind of investment, yes, to provide for the local consumption, but most of the investment that we seek is the one that is going to export to the United States. And within the rules of the game, within CAFTA, particularly in the case of textile, which is something that is important for the exports of the United States, is that the raw material, the yarn, has to come from the area. So we cannot take it from China, for instance, but it has to come from the United States or the country that's part of the free trade agreement. But that has allowed us to increase that trade relationship with the United States and has allowed us to grow. And what we are seeking is to grow even more, and in those areas. Having said that, I think that there are some barriers that are limiting our ability to increase trade with the United States. And there are certain agricultural products that have that are limited for us. I'll give you two examples. One of them is berries. We're a great producer of berries, but we have had some issues in exporting those to the United States. And the other one is avocados. I don't know, perhaps you don't know, but the Hass avocado, which is the one that I like the best, comes from Guatemala. Its origin is Guatemala, but we cannot export the Hass avocado to the United States because USDA hasn't given us the authorization. So those are the kind of things that through an administrative decision by the U.S. administration, it can increase exponentially the exports and the jobs that are created, and by doing so, reduce migration to the United States.
Well, let's thank the panel. They're on day great. Let's give them a hand.